فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما.
Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Islamic Mary podcast. So one of the things I love doing when I travel and meeting different people is just to talk and hear people, their questions, their comments regarding the Islamic Mary, Maryam throughout the centuries, and hearing their questions, just speaking about faith and spirituality, what's on their mind. And one of the recent questions someone asked me is, what can Maryam do? Like, why Maryam? So what is the potential of Maryam or the Islamic Mary? So this was a question that was asked at the American Academy of Religion. We had a roundtable discussion on the book, and I thought about the question. I was like, yeah, that is a good question. What can Maryam do, and why should people pick up the book or discuss Maryam in their classes, in their study circles, and even in everyday conversations? So one of the folks in our table was someone at Emory University who was a professor and someone who works in administration. I had the opportunity of speaking there earlier this semester, and he had a really good answer to that question. And he said, well, Maryam, or the Islamic Mary, was able to bring together different groups of people on his campus. So when they had this event, they saw that was co-sponsored by the Middle Eastern Studies program. And it was co-sponsored by Religious Studies and finally by the Chaplain's Office. So he made the strong point that the Islamic Mary, Maryam, touches on different groups of people, and each groups of people speak about religion, but they may not necessarily speak to one another. And if we go through this list of different groups and sponsoring organizations, I've seen it replicated in different institutions as well. So first off, Islam is usually discussed within area studies. So this is a program that I particularly graduated from. I have a master's in Arab studies. And instead of studying Islamic studies, I actually got a master's in Arab culture. So Islam is often seen as a Middle Eastern religion, originates in the Arab world. And if you want to study Islam, you need to go study in a Near Eastern department or Middle Eastern studies. Now, those two are different. For instance, oftentimes an Arab studies program or a Middle Eastern studies program is a program that focuses on the contemporary Middle East or the contemporary Arab world. So I graduated from the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies at Georgetown University for my master's. So this is one group that is interested in Islam. They're interested in Islam in a particular region, and not necessarily as a global phenomenon. And they understand Islam, or they see Islam as an Arab phenomenon. So, for instance, I did a lot of Arabic studies, speaking Arabic as well as reading it, and then traveling to the region. So this is one group that has shown a lot of interest in Maryam. And of course, Mary is a name that's found throughout the Middle East. You find the Virgin House of Mary in Turkey. There are celebrations about her birth and Advent in Lebanon. There are shared visions of her in Egypt and other places where there are a lot of Muslim-Christian dialogue and interactions. So this is a group that often speaks about religion, but not necessarily in connection with other parts of campus. So the second group is religious studies. So this is a department or program that focuses on the study of religion. So instead of a particular region of the world like the Middle East or the Far East, they're interested in the idea of religion as a phenomenon. So studying of Islam in comparison maybe to Christianity, to Judaism, to Buddhism and Hinduism. And I actually never got a degree in religious studies, but I graduated from my PhD program and then I went to the American Academy of Religion. And that's where I became more acquainted with religious studies and religious studies scholars. So here I was introduced to certain theories of religion. So you might have a study of religion that's focused more on women's studies, or a theory of religion more on interfaith studies or interreligious studies. You also might have theories of religion that are more focused on the connection or relationship between modernity and tradition. So this was another department that expressed interest that, hey, we are interested in religion. Maryam is a religious figure, a figure of spirituality. And she's a figure that we are fascinated with because she crosses multiple religions. So she is someone that is found within Christianity, within Islam, and we enjoy learning about the interaction between those two. Now, religious studies is more academic, and it is something that is focused on the idea of the academic study of religion. So it's not necessarily the confessional, the personal relationship with God, but it's more about understanding these religions and providing religious literacy. Now, the third group is the chaplaincy office. And this is a group of folks that are interested in the applied aspect of religion, that they want to see religion implemented on their campuses. They want to foster religious and spiritual identity. There are different offices throughout the country. So you have departments or you have offices of spiritual life. So they may focus on the spiritual dimension, someone's relationship with God, also questions of death and purpose and meaning. Also, you have other offices of religious life. So they are focused more on religion and religious practices. So how can Christians practice their religion? How can they do mass? How can they have Bible study? How can Muslims perform their Jummah or their Friday prayers? How can Jews access resources related to practicing their faith, like the Seder or Passover? So this is another group that's fascinated with Maryam because they see Maryam as a figure that helped enable their worship of God and represent a model for faith and practice. And then maybe a fourth group I can add to this list is that of Islamic studies. So Islamic studies programs are found throughout the country, but they are less than maybe the other three, that of the Middle Eastern studies, religious studies, the chaplain's office. So Islamic studies programs are unique and niche. And I graduated from Islamic studies program, Arabic and Islamic studies. And of course, as the name suggests, they are interested in Islam as a phenomenon. So while other departments or offices are interested primarily within a region or studying religion as a whole, or that of a chaplain's office, then here in Islamic studies, they're interested in Islamic Muslims and the Islamic intellectual tradition. So one of the things that came up in that roundtable was these are all groups on campus that often focus on the study of religion, right? You have Middle Eastern studies, but oftentimes Middle Eastern studies don't really talk to religious studies, right? So they're more focused on a region of the world, what's going on there, the politics of, Middle Eastern studies frequently is interested in the Israeli-Arab conflict, as well as questions about political power, economics, and American interest within the region, while religious studies is more focused on the study of religion, religious literacy, trying to make people understand what religion is all about, understand religious differences. And then more the chaplain's office is about the applied, implementing religion on campus and giving students a sense of purpose and belonging. So while all these groups here are interested in religion, they often speak past one another or they don't necessarily directly communicate. So in previous institutions, for instance, for myself, I was in the religious studies department, but the chaplain's office wasn't always in communication with the religious studies department. They saw themselves having a different mission. Religious studies folks might have been a little more secular or a little more aloof. They wanted to have a more academic study of religion, not necessarily be caught up in the actual religious practice, while the folks in the chaplain's office were more interested in implementing religion and holding on to orthodoxy, while maybe religious studies folks want to question orthodoxy and to rethink it. And I can give a story here also of a time where I was at Valpo University giving a talk. And when we did a panel on Muslim-Christian relations, we had folks who were Muslim there, Protestant, and Catholic. And when the organizers sat back and they analyzed the program, they said to me, "Oh, Eunice, we never had the Protestants and Catholics here before." And what was fascinating is that the Islamic Maryam in particular was able to bring even different Christian groups together and to have this conversation. And this leads to ecumenical dialogue or intra-religious communication, where people who are interested in religion or interested in Maryam, are now in the same room together, when before they were in separate corners and not necessarily speaking to one another. So this is something that I'm really excited to see, is that the potential of Maryam is to allow for new discussions, dialogues, and to allow for new projects to develop. One of the things about writing a book is that you put this book out there in the world, but people will take it in different places. So for instance, I'm in touch with some filmmakers, and they're putting together a documentary called Son of Mary, and emphasizing the role of Maryam and that of Jesus. And this is exciting because, yes, the book does provide a history and intellectual foundation, but people will build upon it. They'll write their own memoirs. So I just reviewed a book proposal of a Muslim woman who is writing a book about her personal relationship with faith and religion, and how Maryam plays an inspiring role for her. And I can speak maybe personally to myself. What has Maryam done for me, right, in my academic work? And I think Maryam has broadened my perspective. So one of the things in a PhD program is that you focus on a very narrow topic. And I did 14th century Damascus. I focused on a particular figure named Ibn Kathir and his relationship with one of his teachers, Ibn Taymiyyah. And this was enriching, and I learned so much, and actually led me to biblical and Quranic figures, because he wrote this very important book called Qasas al-Anbiya, The Stories of the Prophets. And through reading that book, I became fascinated with all these different figures, and eventually wrote a book with John Kaltner on that issue, and then later with Maryam. So through, writing this book, I was, fascinated with the story of Maryam and how it has not been fully told or explained. And then while there has been several books on Abraham, there was not that many on Maryam and her role in history, the modern period, and contemporary relations. So this was something that was unique for me, that while Abraham did provide certain themes, for example, Abraham, the idea of sons, right, of the patriarch, of building the Kaaba, or the house of God, of sacrifice, Maryam has opened up new doors for me that I hope to walk through. So for instance, she has connected me with other historical Muslim female figures, such as Salama and Rabi'a al-Adawiyya. Rabi'a al-Adawiyya, of course, is this famous mystic who believed in worshiping only the one true God. A famous story of hers is that she walks through the streets of Basra holding a torch, and then in her other hand holding a bucket of water. And they say, Rabia, what are you doing? And she says, I'm going to burn paradise so no one worships God to get into paradise. And I'm going to take this bucket of water and extinguish hell so people don't worship God for the fear of him, that people should only worship God for his own sake. And of course, Salama, who was one of the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, and her remarkable narration of how the Muslims fared when they were in Abyssinia, and how they went to the Christian king, and how they recited Surah Maryam and were able to stay there in refuge for several years before they returned back to Arabia and then to Medina. So Maryam has made me appreciate biblical and Quranic figures further, such as Moses, Musa, and Ibrahim, and really helped me understand that Maryam is also one of the major figures, that she should be included in maybe the top 5, top 10 figures that are shared between these various religions. And she has led me to explore new concepts such as love and interfaith relations. So Maryam has been essential for me in exploring the idea of emotions, right? So she talks about, I wish I was forgotten, I wish I had died. And then the Quran says, do not be sad, la tahzani, don't be in a state of debilitating sadness where you are unable to be active and show and demonstrate agency. And she has made me form new relationships and partners with nonprofit organizations, scholars, and community members. So as I put this podcast and as well as this book out in the world, people have reached out to me. So one person just recently reached out to me and said, hey, can we chat? And my name is Maryam. I want to understand my name better, and my namesake, and where does this name come from, and how this is connected to social justice. So these small interactions are new opportunities to build coalitions, partnerships, and friendships. And I don't know where these doors and opportunities will take me, but I know I have Maryam to thank and appreciate. So I think as this book is a journey to put this work into the world, but also when you share the book, whether it's through writing or speaking, then you hear what other people have to say, and it can lead to new opportunities and ways of living and being. So in conclusion, I find that the Islamic Mary, Maryam, is bringing people together in unique ways. So that it's not just one group of people. Yes, I sometimes speak only to Muslim audiences or Christian ones or academic, but I'm also finding that Maryam is bringing people together that normally do not come together or share their spaces, that they are people who are interested in religion and religious practice and Islam and Christianity, but now they're coming together in the same room and hearing something new for the first time. And Maryam allows for us to focus on other topics that maybe are overlooked. So the question of emotion and religion, the idea of sadness, of darkness, the idea of despair, that idea of enacting agency and praying to God, having an intimate, close relationship with the divine, and opens up other topics such as motherhood. What does it mean to be a mother? Having a relationship with a child, often being overlooked for your contributions. Also the elevated status that we see in the pre-modern and Islamic tradition of a mother, and which demands respect. Also the idea of a daughter, that daughters are often marginalized or not treated the same as sons, but it's important that a daughter is valued within the Quran, the prophetic tradition, and should be given certain rights and responsibilities. Questions of female spirituality and leadership, it leads to other discussions of the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, such as Salama, spiritual figures like Rabia Adawiya, and it allows us to imagine a world where there can be female leaders and female spiritual role models, that men and women do not just look at role models in their particular gender, but they actually look at role models that are of a gender other than themselves. So males can look at females and say, hey, I can be like that person. Or a woman can look at a male and say, hey, that's an opportunity for me to rise. And part of writing this book is for males, for young men to also look at people like Maryam, Mary, and to see her potential and how she can transform their lives. And lastly, she's opened new doors and new opportunities. So she's someone that has allowed me to go and speak at different places, have opportunities to create new relationship with nonprofit organizations, and just speak to everyday people on the street who are trying to figure out their lives. How does God fit within them? How can they be a faithful, spiritual, religious person in the modern world? How can they connect issues that they care about, such as hunger or climate change, to tradition and religion and the religious practice? So these are new doors. I don't know where they will go or where they will take me, but I'm really excited to explore them and see how they can enrich me and benefit my life and others. So thanks once again for listening to the Islamic Mary podcast. You can order my book, which is out. I'm really happy to see that some of the first waves of books have already sold out. Fortress Press is getting new copies of the book. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Also, once you read it, please leave a review. You can subscribe to this podcast. This podcast is available on YouTube as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Encourage your friends, students, and colleagues to listen to this podcast. I had some colleagues this semester say they've used this podcast in courses such as Women and Gender, also on the Quran and Bible. You can review this podcast. I'm so happy to see that we have a good number of reviews of this podcast, and each review is a form of encouragement to me. Starting this podcast almost a year and a half ago, I was always skeptical who's going to listen, but through your reviews is always a sense of encouragement. And you can visit my website and join my newsletter to learn more about the Islamic Mary, Maryam, and the various programs and events related to her. Thanks once again, and take care.